All right, Jennifer, okay for me to go? Just double checking if you had anything
Yes,
that you want to say.
I just wanted to just say, again, thanks to everyone for being here. This is the second of a three-part training that the El Dorado National Forest Interpretive Association and El Dorado National Forest are co-hosting, and we're really glad to have Peter here today. State Parks is doing a lot of amazing interpretation and is really a leader in this virtual interpretation, so we're going to learn a lot today. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everybody, I've actually been reading over everybody's names and kind of background, and I'm very impressed. I like it. Well, who am I? So my name is Peter Ostroskie, and I am a State Park Interpreter 1 currently. I'm actually serving as an out of class for our department as an Interpreter 3, so that's a manager of interpretation. But my background with Interp is a little different than most. As you met Cara last week, I believe. She actually came from Humboldt State, has a degree in interpretation. I actually come from San Jose State with a degree in history. And so my history degree, when long time ago, was told to me like, hey, unless you're going to be a teacher, you need to find something else. So I became an interpreter, and it's been working out pretty well ever since. I have a little bit about my employment background. I have worked for nonprofits in the Bay Area. I have worked for California State Parks for about 10 years. I also worked for the Golden Gate National Recreation Area on Alcatraz Island for a year or so. And so a lot of the things that Cara has shown you in that last webinar, you'll see how a lot of those things that kind of mesh in with this as well because of this diverse training and background. So what do I do currently? I actually work at headquarters in Sacramento, California. And there I'm the statewide coordinator for the Junior Ranger program, as well as Jack of all trades. It's kind of the nice title that we get to give ourselves. And what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about guided hikes. And guided hikes are a formal type of presentation for interpretive presentations. And building upon that, this means that we have a theme and planning and a whole bunch of process that I'm going to go into. And there's a lot of other things that we're going to talk about as well. But I know that from the last webinar, you all had some questions in regards to, how do you do guided hikes with this time of COVID? How do we establish, this digital presence? So I've kind of included a few things with that as well into the presentation, but I wanted to just reach out to everyone right now and either in the chat, actually we'll keep it to the chat so that makes it a little bit easier. If you have questions that you've come to this webinar to, go ahead and drop them into the chat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to see what you have so far of what you want to know about guided hikes, how to present and things of that nature. So I'll give you about a minute or two to get that going. Go ahead and drop your questions into the chat. Just kind of, again, these are questions about what do you want to know about guided hikes? What are some things that you want to be able to do with them? So go ahead and start adding that into the chat. I'm going to give you about a minute or two. Everybody's typing away. Okay. Guilty. I'm a slow hiker. Thank you, Lester. Can be photographers. Exactly as you are stating, give the information or let the participants do the asking. Okay. It was suggested to me to have visual aids. What kind of visual aids can you take along without them being cumbersome? All right, we can talk about that. Props are always good. It's a good one, Carl. I like it. Linsmore, exactly as you are starting. Sorry. Everyone's dropping questions now. It's awesome. Give the information or let the participants do the asking. Okay, cool. Newbie here. Anne, thank you. It's good to admit that. Everyone, we all started somewhere. We're all students. Looking forward to hearing your presentation. Don't have questions. Would want to know what doing with COVID-19 mask. Yep. We actually, with the COVID mask situation, I'll talk a little bit about it. We've discussed about, because having your mouth visible is actually an ADA issue. Good. So, all right. So if you do have questions along the way, let's go ahead and use that chat feature. We will open up for questions a little bit later on, but these are all great ways to start. Best ways to encourage participants to contribute their own knowledge during the hike. Yeah, you know, that's another great one, and we'll cover it. That's great. All right, cool. I'm glad I've prepared for this. So let me, I'm looking for my next slide button. Ah, that's why I put you all on the bottom. Move you to the side. There we go. So before we get started, I've got another little activity for you, and you might be at a desk, you might not be, you know, you can do this later since we're recording this. So I want you to grab a piece of paper and a pen, or open up a Word document. And I want you to think about a tour or a nature walk that you went on, okay? You probably take a minute or two to maybe think about it. It might have been a little while. And I want you to write down 3 things you remember from that walk. What are 3 things? And they can be a tangible or intangible thing. Just write them down for yourself. And remember, a tangible is a physical thing, an intangible is more of an emotional connection. But those are things that you can have down. That's good. But write down 3 things you remember from that walk. All right. Now, I know probably everyone's seen the next bullet on my slide. Now write down what you think the message was that you got when you walked away from the tour. Okay. So what was that message? 3 things, that message. Those are the things I want you to write down. Awesome. So the 3 things you've written down are normally associated with stops or something that you might have seen along the trail or something like that, which we'll talk about. And the message that you wrote down that you heard, that is that theme that interpreter wanted you to walk away with. And so you see how, you know, you've already experienced a guided walk or something like this before. And so you already are a step ahead of a lot of things. And I just wanted to acknowledge that, because some of this information will be, maybe you already know it, maybe you don't, but just acknowledging that you have the knowledge behind this, and we're just growing upon that knowledge. So keep that in mind. All right, good. So we really have kind of 3 goals today for this webinar, and our goals for about the guided hikes is organizing and developing one. We want to think about the logistics and planning of the hike, and we want to make that connection and immersion into the hike. And I keep saying hike, I should be correcting myself. It needs to be a guided walk. And the reason why we'll talk about later is because hike is a different word that is associated with things. So this is what we're going to kind of cover today. And of course, I'm going to check to see if you did your homework. I know there's probably a lot of teachers out there who's like, oh, he's getting his back. Yes, I am. But your homework was to watch my friend Griff up at North Coast Redwoods. And he's talking about the maples that are there in the forest that he's walking around at. Now, in his video, what I want you to do is either start writing down in the chat box, what do you remember from it? What were some things that you liked from it? And kind of start developing these little bits of notes from what you saw that Griff did. Griff is an extreme professional. He's an amazing guy. He's a lot of fun. And he's very interactive. So I want you to kind of write down things from that video that you watched about, you know, what did he do that you really liked? How did he do it? And did you see a planning process with Griff? All right, so feel free to share in the chat box, what did you see from Griff's presentation? You know, I'd really like to see everything that you were witnessing from this man. His use of humor was great. Yep, humor is a great thing. It's one of the things that with interpreters, like, you have to kind of play with in order to know how to do it right. Okay, humor, engaged, good. I now know that riparian means good. Yep. Yeah, he was really kind of showing what was up ahead on the trail. That was really good of him. Yeah.
This is Frank. I see the picture, but I'm not getting the video.
It's just a picture. The video link was included with your homework.
I didn't get that.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I just want to clarify, it's Jennifer, that it was optional. It was optional pre-work. We could actually, if you think there's time, Peter, we could actually play the video now. That might be the best.
I think everybody kind of has the link, so let's go ahead and you know, just say, you know, take a watch at what Griff does.
A few minutes, just a few minutes, yeah.
I didn't get the homework assignment either.
I'll put it in the chat for folks.
Okay.
I'll just put the link in if folks can wait here for a second.
And Jennifer's going to put the link into the chat box. So if you didn't get it, I would highly suggest watching Griff. He's really, really good at what he does, especially with a lot of the things in this video. And what this video really does is kind of also cross that bridge of like, well, if we can't do this in person, how can we do this live? But we'll cover that later. I'm just looking at interpretive techniques for Griff. Looking at his knowledge and everything. So Susan, good, liked his background knowledge. Ben, okay. His close-up details, I might have missed. Yep. Jennifer, that was a good one. So there's a lot of things that you can learn by watching other interpreters, and especially even in this digital age, that can help you with a normal guided hike. And in my presentation, we're going to be talking about most of it is if COVID didn't happen and you are getting people coming into your locations to come and take a guided walk with you. But I have included some stuff at the end of how to deal with this with COVID. So just keep that in mind. And he explained words as he went along, connected to what we may, i.e. other plants, tree called, yeah. The link was not in the, okay, no worries, don't worry. We have that link placed in the chat box. So we're gonna keep moving along though. So where do we start when we're thinking about that we want to do a guided walk? And you know, a lot of folks are thinking about maybe a special trail that they've really enjoyed over the years. Some of you are thinking about trails that, you know, that maybe not a lot of people know about, and so maybe you want to share about that. One of the first things, though, is that a guided walk can also communicate into guided other recreations as well. So off-highway vehicle recreation can also use a lot of the same techniques we're going to talk about. The first major thing that we want to have established is a theme. And that theme is that single sentence message with a tangible and intangible in it. That is your overall message that you're giving to people. So like our first activity where, what was that message from that nature hike that you took away? That was their theme. So that's really important. You want to have a nice, well-established theme, because that's basically how you build your guided walk is from that theme. Now, that theme and that development happens over time, or you might have something already planned. You know, that's great. But these are some other things that we're going to need to look at. We're going to need to look at the planning of the guided hike or guided walk. We're going to need to look at the research, like what do we need to know before we do this? We're definitely going to want to work on theme development, because as you practice, your theme might change a little bit, but it should kind of still be the same. And then we're going to talk also about presentation skills. So, of course, everyone loves planning ahead. So planning is a super important part of a guided walk. And the first thing you really need to know is you need to know your setting. You need to know your resource, that KR, right? And that resource is either a trail that you wanna focus on, or another little section that you really want to talk about. And that route that you choose, you want to walk it both ways. And what do I mean by that is that you want to go the direction that you would probably take your group in, but you also want to walk it the other direction so that you can check for other different opportunities that are along the way. Kind of knowing your path of travel is really important for also checking for hazards. So if you're walking it, you're noticing rocks, poison oak, other things that folks might have trouble with. So you're keeping all those notes in your planning of what you want to go through and what you want to do on a guided walk. The more familiar you are with the path of travel, the stronger personal connections you'll have. And, you know, working with parks and being on trails a lot, you know, walking them different ways, you see them in different times of the year. So you start noticing the little intricacies and things that might add into your guided walk. So it's about knowing that resource, that KR. Now, once you really know your path of travel, you know, basically, you know a lot of stuff of what's going on and what's happening, then you kind of want to start looking at selecting stops that you want to use in this guided walk. And the stops that you want to use are really like pearls, like on a pearl necklace. And what happens is that they add to your overall theme and the overallness of your program. So each stop is going to be something that contributes to what you're doing. Starting off though, you really have 3 stops to begin with. You have a staging area, you have your first stop, and then you have an ending location. Other stops in between you can add, and we'll talk about how many is too many and things like that. So you're thinking about that. You're thinking about, on your guided walk, all these things of planning and kind of looking at. I would also tell you to look at the terrain. Look at rocks, look at everything else that's going on, and really make notes of what's happening out there. because it's going to play a really big, important part. After you've kind of established where you want your staging area, your first stop, and your end stop to kind of be, you know, these are some really great little kind of tidbits to help you out with that. So the staging area is where everyone's going to gather and meet you at. This is going to be the spot where it's advertised for your program. You know, meet me in the parking lot at Ice House. Boom. Or meet me at the parking lot at Ice House by trail marker 29. That's where you're going to have people gather at. It's easy to find. So people aren't like looking around for you all the time. You know, maybe there's a rock that you can, you know, prop yourself up on. Maybe there's something else around. Holding a flag sometimes works as well. But you want it to be an easy spot where people can find you at, and so that they know where you're starting from. You want to have adequate space for everyone too. So if you're planning a guided walk and you're thinking that this is its first time, you know, you still want to plan for maybe about 30 people to possibly show up. And you want the staging area location to be near the planned route, okay? This seems like a no-brainer, but there has been people out in the field who will have a staging area way far away from the starting of the route. And so literally what will happen is people will walk over to where the planned route is, and you've already burned up maybe 10 minutes of time. So these are all things that you really want to think about when you're doing this. Now, your staging area from there, you want to think about your first stop. And your first stop is a location where people, if they're kind of coming late, they might be able to still see you. And so you're still within eye contact of the staging area. The staging area is also where we're going to cover a really big thing of Maslow's hierarchy, which is that basic need. The staging area is where we're going to cover safety. We're going to make sure everybody has water. We're going to make sure everybody went to the bathroom right before we get out onto the trail. The first stop really should be where we get to go on the journey. We get to go on this guided walk with you, where we are going to have this adventure. We're going to be Frodo and the Lord of the Rings, right? This is where we're going to go. Now, you're all wondering, what do we do with the latecomers? All right. And latecomers, it happens a lot with with folks coming in late. Things happen along the way. So what do you do with latecomers? Well, the biggest thing that you can do with latecomers is that first stop. You can still catch them and be like, okay, like if you're joining our walk, come on down here, and you can still bring them into the tour. But the other thing that you want to do is you want to inform staff who might be around in the area for a while of where your route is of travel, where that first stop is, where you're going to be going to. And that will help with the latecomers to kind of join you a little bit maybe later on if they're really late. Integrating latecomers into the group, there's a lot of factors with that. You know, if they start joining you and your group's too large, you know, you want to incorporate them, but at the same time, you also want to think safety-wise and things like that. And especially if there's another program coming up. So, you know, if you have a program that's happening, you know, every half hour, you know, if somebody's late coming and they're really, really late, you can say like, oh, our next program is going to start in 20 minutes or 5 minutes, and you can start right back at the staging area. That's okay to do. But just kind of working with that. Let's see. Just going over my notes. So from our first stop, we then are going to develop other stops after that. And each of these stops that you develop after your first stop should be something that adds to that pearl necklace, that theme, that program that you really want to get across. You want it in a sequential, or you want it in a story order so that it makes sense, a beginning, a middle, and an end. So speaking of the end, the ending location is where you're going to wrap everything up. You're going to conclude your program. This should be near the starting point. It doesn't have to be. It does help. And if it isn't near the starting point or near the staging area, what you want to do is you want to be able to direct people so that they can find that staging area to get back to their vehicles and so forth. This should support and even conclude your presentation. There's probably a lot of you on here that have done guided walks where you end at like a breathtaking scenery, like a waterfall or a geological gem or anything like that. And so if you're thinking of ending at that location, I would suggest, and there's a lot of other interpreters who would suggest, that you should end your program just before that. Because if you end there at the beautiful, breathtaking scenery that's happening, your folks are not going to be connected with you. They're going to want to go take their pictures. They're going to want to go do their thing. So if you end it before, bring them to that location, then they have that time to kind of do what they wanted to do, is to see this waterfall or geologic formation or historic building. And that is a really important thing. I know there's a lot of interpreters, and I was really guilty of it, ending at like this specific location that, you know, was going to be this breathtaking thing, when honestly it worked better to end it a little bit before, bring people there, allow them to have that, do questions, and to enjoy the rest of their time at our parks. This is just kind of a step-by-step way of going through a guided walk. And I know that I just saw somebody pop up with a question. There we go. All right. What is the best time to give big picture orientation of the full walk? So the best time to give an orientation of the walk is right at the staging area. That is going to cover a basic need. So that basic need is, okay, thank you for joining me today. Our walk is going to be a leisurely stroll. It's going to just go around this area, and we're going to come back here right where we started. You know, giving that quick orientation helps. We want to cover the basic needs at the staging area: orientation, water, food, bathroom, all that stuff. Because when we get to our first stop, we want to make sure that we can go even deeper into that connection with the resource. That's a good question, though. I like that one. All right. You're thinking about your stops. You're thinking about now about, you know, all these other steps that you're starting to do. But before you even start practicing going into doing this guided walk, you want to start thinking about a thematic roadmap, okay? And this thematic map helps you with your sequential order of where you're going to make your stops at. So looking at our map, you can see that we're going to start from the staging area. We're going to go up to a standing snag. We're going to go to a tree, bird nest, woodpecker, brambles, and a mossy log. Now, all of these things might connect or will connect with your theme message that you're trying to get across. So, let's see, I'm just making sure I'm following my notes correctly. Yes. These will all illustrate you and everything else that you're doing to the audience in a very clear message. You know, it's like when you were all working on the bark beetle theme. You know, you've created this theme of the bark beetles upsets the harmony of the web of life, something of that nature, you know. But now you want to include stops that kind of tell that whole theme. You know, you might include a standing grove of dead trees. Then you might include an area where you might see bark beetles. Then you might include, so all those things add into that whole story. So I'm going to stop real quick. I want to make sure that this is all making sense. I want to let this settle in, because I know there's a lot of things I've covered so far. And I just want to see if anybody has any questions so far. So let's see, Larry, if the walk is 10 minutes or so on, do you repeat the info to the latecomers? You know, you can do a quick brief kind of cover if you want. But for folks who are 10 minutes late, they'll get it. They'll get into your program and be like, oh, okay, like we're talking about the woodpecker. If they are, you know, over like 30 minutes late, they might want to catch another tour. They might want to catch another time that you're doing a guided walk, because by that time they might miss out on a lot of things. Do you kick them out? No, you can invite them to come along and say like, you know, hey, you know, I saw that you joined rather late. You're welcome to join us. We're doing a great guided walk. We've got about maybe 5 minutes left. But, you know, we have another one starting here next week. You can join us. It's at the same time, things like that. So should you disclose your theme message to the walkers? Where? All right. Your theme message can be disclosed at either the staging area, kind of right before you step off, or it can be disclosed at your first stop. A lot of interpreters like to do it at their first stop. And the reason why is because we're establishing everything at that staging area. We're establishing the basic needs. We're establishing that we are going to be the leader of this guided walk, and that we are going to move on to our next stop where we're going to dive deeper. Now, you know, how do I keep people kind of interested who want to go to that, even just the first stop? You give a really great transition. And so, and it's not even your theme yet if you didn't want to give that. It's up to you on if you want to do that. But a really good transition, you know, can help folks kind of move on to the next location and make them want to stay with you. So, you know, one of the transitions used at Alcatraz a lot of times was, you know, if you know, we're getting ready to do our walk, our next stop is going to tell us a story about escape. You want to go find out? Let's walk with me. Okay. It's establishing that, okay, you want to know more about my story? You got to follow me. So that's a really important thing. So again, the theme can be either at the staging area. Most interpreters usually do it at like the first stop. All right, I do geology walks. I generally do a sequential timeline. However, good examples come along early in the walk of later times. Yep, that don't come up later in the walk. How do you handle a disruption in sequence? So to handle a disruption in sequence, it's really, it's tough. Believe me, it is. But what you can do is you can think about stories that you've read that where the sequence isn't always right there. And it's up to good transitions. And those good transitions will help you to kind of change that sequence. You could even be like, we're going to read this story backwards. Well, that makes me interested. I want to know about how to read the story backwards of geology. You know, it's that whole thing of how can I make this have a connection and be relevant? All right, let's see. I'm going to do one more question here. And Lester, I'll get to you after we get going again. Kelly, how do you choose where to make your stops? Are somewhat evenly spaced stops best, or do you just let the natural landscape dictate them? It depends. So I normally let the natural landscape depict it for me. The reason why is because in a guided walk, most of your time is going to be spent on the walk itself. Certain locations that are more connected and have that natural landscape that you want to get across, that's definitely where you want your stops at, you know. And the best place to kind of choose your stops are going to be places that make your thematic message even stronger. So, you know, you could have that first stop kind of down the road so that you're keeping an eye on the staging area, but your next stop might not be for like 5 minutes or 6 minutes. And then you get to your location, you know, and as you get there, you help with chit chat and things. And then you go, wow, that was a little bit of a step, folks, but hey, we have made it to a location that is going to dive even deeper into our story today. You know, those things help. And since Lester, you're my last one, I'll do this one. What types of information can be shared as you're walking between stops versus at stops? Okay, you are only talking to a few people as you walk. So, you know, information, like usually when you're walking, You know, you kind of want to keep that story a little bit to yourself. And you're just kind of helping with questions along the way. And you really want to keep yourself established that you are the leader of this group. You want to answer those questions. You want to have that little bit of chit chat. But really keeping that the main part of your story and that theme that really hits everything home for the visitor, that is really important. That kind of with you, you know. A lot of times what I would do is if I got questions while I was on a walk, you know, that really added into my story, I would say something like, you know, oh, that's a really good one. You're going to find out more about that at our next stop. Oh, that one's really good. You know, that's going to be a little bit further down the line. You know, that still keeps people interested. Like, okay, well, that's relevant to me. And I'm going to remember that question that I got. And then as I get further down the road, you know, I'm going to look at that visitor and be like, I had a really great question from Carl. Carl, great. So Carl asked me along the way, and it dives right into this. What that does is we've made it to our location. I'm still keeping with my story. I've made a connection with Carl that, hey, your question was super valuable to me, and I'm going to answer it right here at this stop. So that's where you kind of do that. I know folks are going to probably be asking about walking backwards. We'll cover that. Don't worry. We'll cover that in a second. Just making sure I covered everything. So an individual location might provide like several topic elements. So, you know, several tangible things that you might want to use. So looking at our map, for example, at one stop, you could discuss bird nesting behavior, right? Brambles, you're talking about standing snags, you're talking about woodpecker tree. You know, the cover provided by the trees or habitat destruction is affecting bird reproduction. You know, it's kind of it's all those main parts of your story where this thematic map helps you when you're planning. Now, guided walks take a lot of planning. And so this is really done, and it takes time. It's just like your theme. This all kind of has to kind of come together. And this is all going to fit into an order and kind of make it so that it's more of a good, solid story. Some folks might want to draw out a map. It's totally welcome. You know, whatever floats your boat on this to help you to make that connection in your story. All right. Now, you've all done the planning. You've done your research. You know, you've looked at different resources. You've understood about the different resources that you're talking about. You've designed your thematic map of where you kind of want your stops to be at. You've created all this planning. You've done all this planning. It looks amazing. But however, it's always the question that you get, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. Okay. An interpreter who, there are some good interpreters who they can develop a program, go out and give it, and it's really good. A really good program is really seen when you practice it and you keep practicing it. So, you know, to practice it, what I would suggest, and what we usually have a lot of our staff do, is we have you go out and do this by yourself. You go out and you walk the trail, making your stops, talking to people. You look a little crazy, I know, but you look a little crazy out there, going out there and talking like you would if you had a group of people around you. This will help you kind of figure out time-wise where you're at. This will also help you with, you know, well, does that thematic stop really need to be there? Could I take that out? You know, thinking about timing and other things like that. That helps you. You've got to practice that. The other thing that I would definitely suggest, and what I used to do, and it helps out a lot, is I would put in my earpiece for my phone and I would record myself at my stops. And as I recorded myself, and then I went back and listened to it, it sounds like nails on a chalkboard. Nobody likes doing it. So, you know, just bear with me on that. But when you go back and listen to yourself talk, you're hearing the things that you're saying, and you're like, oh, I really didn't need to say that. Oh, okay, well, that doesn't really work at that spot. Okay, but that really worked over here better. Oh, no, that was really good. And what that does, again, is it starts honing that skill of interpretation. You know, interpretation is an art. It's a teachable art, but it's an art. And you only get better with art is by practicing it. Time yourself. We'll talk about, you know, how long these programs should be and such like that, but you should time yourself. You should see how long this takes you to do. And always remember that, you know, it's probably gonna be a little bit longer than that time that you got. Once you feel comfortable enough, you know, and you feel like maybe I'm ready to present to someone, I would really encourage you to, you know, reach out to fellow people in your association, you know, in the El Dorado National Forest Interpretation Foundation. Reach out to folks like that and say like, hey, I really want to practice my tour. You think a couple of you could come out and just listen to me and then provide me feedback after I'm done? And that also helps you because they'll give you a perspective on your tour that maybe you didn't see. So then pretty much you're ready to present to a group of people. Presenting to a group of people, of course, is always a little bit nerve-wracking, but with enough practice and everything else, it'll feel really smooth and you'll know kind of where you're going and things like that. So I did see another chat pop up. For guides with quieter voices, okay, it is good to have a microphone, or is it not fitting for the nature walk? It's fine to have a microphone. You know, there are some people who, you know, you might not be able to project your voice or things of that nature. So having a microphone does help. It also helps people with meeting an ADA qualification of, you know, they can't hear very well. So this helps everything. It's okay to have a microphone. We used microphones all the time on Alcatraz, and I had a group of 300 people, and I am loud. That microphone, when I wanted to do programs at my normal volume of voice, really helped because it allowed people to come in closer when we were doing these guided walks. Check my time. Cool. So you've practiced. You've gone through all these steps. Now it's time to advertise this program. And when you advertise this program, you want to be looking at what words are you using. So you heard me early on correct myself. Okay. The word hike. When somebody says the word hike, there's a lot of folks who will automatically turn off. You know, why do I want to go hike? It just doesn't seem like fun. To us, we're probably like, yeah, I'm ready. I want to hike. I'm ready to go. Let me get my boots. I'll get my trekking poles. We're good to go. But there's a lot of folks who hike it's not really a fun word. So, you know, use some other great descriptors for this guided walk. You know, use stroll, use saunter, use some of that kind of language that alludes to that, you know, we're doing this program. Everyone's welcome to join us. This is what we really want. Now, when I'm talking about these programs, and I was going to mention this later, these guided walks really need to be anywhere between 45 minutes and then at most an hour and a half. So again, 45 minutes to an hour and a half. After an hour and a half, a lot of folks feel like that this is becoming too strenuous. This isn't what I came here to do. I came here to have a good time. I just joined this walk. What are we doing here? So when you hit that hour and a half point afterwards, that turns into an extended walk or an extended hike or an extended stroll. So you really kind of want to think about that too. Now, can you have programs about hiking? Absolutely. We have programs in state parks that we do backpacking trips. So, you know, there is, there is something for that. But with a guided walk, it's a little different. We really just, with our advertising, we really want to appeal to our audience. We really want them to understand about, you know, that everyone's welcome. We want to appeal to them to be like, no, come join us. We have cool things to teach you. Come join me. You know, that's really what we want to do with these. And something that you want to think about when you're developing your advertising for these programs. Social media and other things like that, you can use a hashtag, and that hashtag is then searchable by people who are looking for things. So say if we use the hashtag walk, there's a lot of hits on the hashtag walk, and yours will pop up in that whole group of people where it will generate more folks. You know, so you want to keep all these things in mind when you're doing advertising. We want to measure our walk in time, not miles. I know I'm talking to a really great group of people who, you know, when I mention miles, some of you get all excited. You know, when I'm talking with my friends about going on certain mile hike or a certain mile walk, we get excited. But most folks in the general public just kind of want more of a time. Like, well, how long is this going to take? I want to kind of go see the waterfall. Okay, like, how long is this going to take? Like, we got to get home. I got laundry to do this weekend. So really think about measuring your guided walks in the time frame. Okay, join us for a guided stroll through the National Forest, starting at Ice House Trailhead for a 30-minute walk or 45-minute walk or whatever you want to do it with, going up to an hour and a half. So just keeping all that in mind, make sure on your advertisement to talk about required gear. This is a safety thing. So when you talk about required gear, you're talking about like closed-toed shoes, water bottle, at least 1 liter. You're talking about bring a quick snack. You're talking about, you know, first aid kit will be provided by the leader of the tour, things like that. And you really want to set the person who's coming to your guided walk up for success. You want them to come and kind of enjoy that type of activity. This really seems like a no-brainer, but there has been many a program that does not say what is required for footwear. And you'll get people showing up in flip-flops for an hour walk. Probably not the best. So you really want to make sure that you're covering that in your advertisement to folks. Now, of course, many of you have probably looked over and saw the use descriptions that entice. So, you know, if you're looking at these kind of entice you to want to know and want to go do it. So, you know, wade the wetlands to discover nature's cleaning crew. I want to know more about that. Peek in the desert holes and hiding places. That sounds neat. You know, these types of descriptions in your advertisement will allow folks to let their mind kind of join in and wonder about what it is that you're going to be doing and what it is that you're going to be seeing on these guided walks. So I did see a couple more questions pop up. Miss Larry's question, second to last. More important to stay on the theme. What types of info can be shared versus stops? More important to stay on the theme or discuss what might be really intriguing question. Okay, so it's good to stay on the theme, but we're going to talk about like really intriguing questions along the way, because those also kind of come into another part of the guided walks as well, as where we call a teachable moment. So I'll get to that in a minute. Thank you for saying that to me, Carl. I appreciate that. Let's see here. Philip. How do you deal with people who appear distressed due to lack of water, clothing, comfort, or health issues? You know, there is a way to handle that. And, You know, this is really up to what it is that your agency or what your association feels is the best. For many of us in state parks, and I'm just going to speak for what we've done in parks, is, you know, if people show up with lack of water, clothing comfort, or health issues, you know, we really let them know at the staging area, like, you know, those shoes, and maybe, you know, maybe you need some more water. You know, I would really check out doing this program another time. I know that there may be people who are completely adamant, like, no, I'm fine, everything will be fine. But then that gets into a safety issue. So you want to bring that up at the staging area. And that's part of your staging area process, is making sure that people have kind of come prepared for this. And, you know, making sure that if people do have health issues, that can be part of your staging area talk. You know, if anybody feels uncomfortable at any point in time in this walk, please tell me. Or if there's anything that I need to know before we head off, please let me know. You know, that allows people to come to you and be like, hey, look, I actually have a heart condition. Is this going to be okay for me? And that can help you along the way as well. Describe expected pace of walk: slow, easy, moderate, etc., and terrain: paved, rocky, steep. Okay, so the pace that you want to set, and this will be, I'll go more into this later, is you want to go at a comfortable pace for your audience, not you, your audience. Okay, your audience may have a pace that is a lot slower than you. That is challenging. I understand that. But we're here to give them an experience. And if we're out there 20 yards ahead of them, they're thinking, man, I really can't keep up. I don't want to do this anymore. So you want to keep it at a pace for really easy, kind of your slowest person that you might have on the tour. You know, in terrain, when you're planning this program, we plan for that pretty much anyone could possibly join us for these. So, you know, you want to think about wheelchair accessibility. You want to think about, you know, what if somebody shows up with crutches? What if you have an elderly person who has one of the little electric carts? All these things have shown up on nature walks. And you really want to plan your walk to make sure that you can give them an experience. So if you're doing something that is extremely steep, extremely hazardous, that all needs to be said on the flyer. You need to provide all that issues up front. You need to make sure that people know about this and really advertise that the heck out of it. And what that will do is that will help to allow that. Now, if you're looking for a particular type of experience with those terrains, so I'm thinking like OHV wise. So if you're thinking of doing super rocky terrain, you know, you want to be thinking about, you know, can everybody do this? Can everybody get through this and everybody be safe on it? You know, if they bring their 5-year-old kid who's on a small mini bike, can he be able to do it? I know we got to give a 5-minute break here for folks, so I'm gonna give you all a 5-minute break real quick. So if you have questions though, please drop them down in the chat box. Go ahead and use the potty. Go ahead and grab a drink, and I want everybody to take a stand, take a stretch, helps feel good, get the blood flowing. We've been sitting here for about an hour. So go ahead and take a quick 5-minute break for us folks, okay? Let's see. I will get to your question here in a minute, Larry. I'm gonna let everybody take their break, all right? I'm going to take a break as well and go grab a little bit more coffee. Enjoy my background. Awesome.
Hi, Peter. I'm going to go against protocol there and actually unmute and talk to you.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, I really like the suggestions and everything here, especially when you mentioned doing the walk backwards. I have to take a look at my route and look at it with totally different eyes and think about doing it from that standpoint. What an excellent suggestion. Really, really appreciated that. So just very much like all of the information you're giving here. This is fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. I know everybody's so quiet. I'm like, are we doing okay? We're good?
Well, everybody's being really good. Folks have themselves muted and everything and aren't chiming in. So, yeah.
Peter, this is Frank.
Fantastic.
Yeah, this is Frank. I just like to compliment you again. One of the things that I am concerned about when I give a walk is how many people are in my group. And I pick out a tail end Charlie. And that person, I never start my narrative until that person is up with the group.
Yep.
I really hate when tour guides stop and start talking and everybody's not there yet.
Yep.
The other thing is I always carry a first aid kit.
Yeah.
For safety.
Frank, I like that, the tail end Charlie thing. We, for us, we call them sweepers. So,
Okay.
you know, it's that person who, it can be a uniformed or a non-uniformed person, but they just kind of follow up with the last folks to just, you know, be like, okay, no, we're doing all right. First aid kit, super important. I'm going to get into stuff that you should carry with you when you're doing these. You know, I know somebody had a question about carrying images and other things like that, and you know what works and what doesn't work, and we'll talk about that.
Okay. The other thing is, I at the staging area, I inform the people, if you're going to leave the group, please notify me.
Yep.
Because I don't want to get to a point and all of a sudden somebody's missing.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Yeah,
no, and that's another thing. I mean, that's really important. I was actually going to cover that coming up, is that, you know, you really want to take, you're the leader of this thing. And so, you know, everybody's safety is on you. So Frank, that's a really good thing to be like, hey, if you're going to leave, can you just like, let me know? Just so that I'm not looking for you. That's good. Yeah.
I think, Peter, you might be reading my message. This is Jennifer. I just wanted to say I really appreciated the accessibility comments that you made. And I think that some of that also, you know, comes with dealing with a program level, an interpretive program that has, you know, diverse offerings. You know, for instance, we have, say, you know, desolation wilderness, you know, opportunities, which would definitely, you know, not be wheelchair accessible. But I think, though, that the program level idea is actually a really important one. And, you know, then we also had a question from Lester, and I don't know the history on any kind of limitations that the Forest Service might have been placing on NFIA's offerings, on our Interpretive Association's offerings. I'm sure potentially there's, you know, concerns about liability and things like that. And so that would be another thing for us to be looking at if we're going to expand how we're doing this with partners. But I just know from being on, say, Sierra Club hikes and things, I know they use waivers and things like that. I don't know if there's any comments you want to make about that, but I'm just highlighting the distinction between what you're saying as state parks, a government agency, and what partner organizations like ENFIA might be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Again, though, I guess the other, wait, let me just also say caveat to that is if ENFIA is doing it through their volunteer agreement, then we are back to, it's on the Forest Service, because that means they are unpaid employees, and anything that happens does track back to the Forest Service. But I think sometimes ENFIA is just also acting as just partners, not necessarily volunteers. But go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, so our backpacking programs and other programs, we provide like kayaking programs, backpacking. We even provide off-highway vehicle tours. And, we provide a waiver that, that folks must sign in order to go on the tour and things like that. When you're talking about something specific like that, I think the organization that really does it best is probably like REI. And other kind of outdoor schools, and they all have people signing waivers and making sure that they're good to go. But yeah, if it's something specific, you really want to be clear with the legality of everything too, and making sure that you're doing CYA, and that's really important. Let's see, Larry Moore, you had a question for me. What if the slowest person will not allow the full extent of the walk to take place? And, I've had this where somebody got partway through the tour and they just couldn't make it anymore. What I would say is, maybe you need to take a rest. Take a rest here, and if when you feel ready, you can come meet us. However, while you're resting, and if I finish the tour, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look for you to make sure that you're okay. But that also then gets into an emergency issue. If somebody can't finish the walk, there might be an emergency issue there, which we're going to cover here too, kind of towards the end of what that is and what that looks like. All right, I know we had 3 more pop up. If you are doing a school group, talk to teachers ahead of time to find out about students' challenges. Yeah, so, I love teachers. Sometimes they don't disclose the full information for you. They do the best they can, and I completely understand that. The best thing to do is before you do something with the school group, you want to contact that teacher and be like, we're doing a guided walk. This is the terrain. This is we're going to take this at an easy pace. Can all students make it and follow the rules of having closed-toed shoes that day? Then it's on the teacher. You have to make sure that you're doing your due diligence to provide all the information for the students to be successful and provide everything that they need to know, and also asking about what it is you need to know about. And that just makes the hike better for everyone all around. So yeah, you want to touch base with them. Let's see, Natalie. Hi, I'm in Humboldt State University. Hey, what's going on, Natalie? Student studying environmental science major. I want to say thank you. Tips you're talking about are great. Review from Genton. Yep. Yeah, the Humboldt State University, you all there, the Lumberjacks, you do a great job of providing some great interpreters. So I'm glad this is helping with that and adding to what that person has done for you. I got a 45, 60-minute walk that explores area mining. My first stop is an important one, as it is the remains of an old hydraulic gear. Cool. The problem I run into is that it's near the road and it can at times be noisy. Any recommendations? I have considered moving the first stop, but this is a crucial piece of the program and is only visible from that location. Oh man, that's tough. I mean, when it's that diamond that you're like, oh, this is super important, and it's super noisy. I mean, one of my recommendations is to, bring people to that location and, stop them and be like, you know, hey, I want you all to take a mental picture of this area. I'm going to give you like 2 minutes to mentally picture this area for us. Hold that image in your head. Just hold it there. Imagine it. Okay, good. Now, I want you to keep that image as we walk to our next spot a little bit further up the road because it's a little noisy around here. And you walk a little bit further up to where it can be a little bit quieter. And then you ask them, what do they remember? That's actually an activity that you can do with people. And it's basically like a memory game. It's like, okay, so how about you share with me one thing you remember from what you saw? Oh, I saw a big metal thing. Oh, I saw this weird, like, you know, thing sticking out of the ground. Oh, I saw like this minecart thing. And you're like, that's right. And so then you can go into your story. It's a little bit quieter, a little bit easier. That's one way that you can handle that. Another way is, you know, I've seen people do it, is where they get a picture and they just like go like, okay, this is a really great stop. Check this out. We're gonna move up. And then you bring out that picture and just kind of remind people what it is. You know, noise is always such a problem, especially, I know you're busy. It's probably busy up there near the roads, maybe Highway 50. So, you know, I know that's difficult. Please comment on how interpretation is a mission-based communication process. The program should be clearly tied to the agency mission. Absolutely. Yeah, you know, this is all part of the planning part of what you're doing. You want to make sure that this is tied to your mission. If you are an agency member on this call right now, you need to talk to your managers about what you want to do, and also if it meets the goals and objectives for what you're trying to do with that resource that you're talking about. If you are part of an agency like that, I highly suggest that. And I encourage it beyond all belief, because your managers might say like, hey, I really like this idea, but this stop, we really don't want people knowing about it. So you think you could maybe change it, especially if it's like a Native American site that they're like, no, you can't do that here. And you want to make sure that it also meets with the goals and objectives. Absolutely. I agree with you completely, Frank. Thanks for the REI idea. Good resource for logistics and organization and responsibility. They are. REI, remember that it is a company making money. But they do a lot of stuff that's really important for the environment. But you know, they are a good source. They are a good resource to kind of see what they're doing. And it never hurts. I call it R&D. You know, most of you are saying research and development. It's also called rip-off and development. You know, if REI is doing it good, do something similar. You know, it works. Clara, maybe you could shorten your talking at the piece of equipment, but do something visually. Yep. Just a heads up about closed-toe shoes. Some of us have to wear open-toed shoes because of medical issues. I've walked the John Muir Trail in Chacos. Yep, I've set myself, as have others. As with everything, they're all valid. Yes, they're valid exceptions. Absolutely. You know, I was using closed-toed shoes because normally that's a really common term that's used on hiking information and things like that. So yeah, no, completely agree with you. Frank, not sure. That's Jennifer. Share your thoughts on the mission. Okay. Looking for any other ones. Natalie, for places that are doing walks during COVID and using visual aids, are they using bigger images so groups can keep distance? I'm guessing people aren't passing things around too much. Nope, we are not passing things around at all. Images themselves, you know, for state parks, just telling you what my agency is doing. We are not doing guided walks. We are not doing in-person interpretation. Everything we've done is moved our programs from in-person to digital. And it can be done. It's a little tricky, but I'll go into that a little bit later. Yep, thank you, Jennifer. Mind yourself. Give us a polite, tactful way to redirect someone who is talking or disrupting your presentation. Oh, yes, the talkers. You know, one of the things is that if they're talking, you know, a really good tool to use is silence. And the reason I say that is because when you get quiet as the lead, everybody else wants to listen to what you have to say. And if somebody's still talking, the group will actually kind of manage itself. Other things that you can do is, I've seen this used, and you have to be super careful with it, is, you know, I've seen interpreters go the whole route of, you know, hey, if you have something to share with us, you know, and that can be tricky. I've seen it used well. I've also seen it used really bad. So I would highly suggest using the silent, you know, keeping that kind of quiet there, and just making people kind of focus in on you and make them want to listen to you. It's funny how, like, in groups that humans will kind of manage themselves, especially when the leader's like, we're waiting. You know, if it works with 4th grade, it can work with adults, believe me. Perfect. If there's a question I might have missed, I apologize. Just go ahead and shoot it to me again in the chat box, and we're going to get started right now, getting back into this. So let's take a look at a couple ways of advertising your walk. So this is a shortened way of advertising your walk, and what it says is, today's discovery walk is very easy. We will walk a half mile. Okay. Pretty simple statement. You know, there doesn't, you would think no harm, no foul. But there's a few things that you can do that would help to improve this. And so short mileage might sound perfect, but it's for a more sedentary person, they might not want to join you on it. This also might sound too easy for someone who's looking for a little bit more. You know, for my friend who was on Muir Trail, you know, if you heard that, you'd probably be like, it's kind of like a kid walk. But you never know, you know. Yeah, and the other thing is, you know, what am I going to discover? What am I going to find out about? What am I going to do? Like, that doesn't tell me anything. I'm going to discover something? Oh, that's nice. So making sure that, you know, you're being a little bit clear. So let's look at another way of this. So what this one says is, today's walk along a relatively easy trail will last 1 hour. Join us for an action-packed tour as we discover many facets of the Maidu culture, present and past. Bring a water bottle and wear a hat, if possible. So, you know, this one kind of is a little bit more involved, right? This one makes folks, even if you're an avid hiker, you're like, wow, I kind of want to know more about this culture. Like, I've read this thing online about the Maidu. I really want to know more about them. So maybe this might get your folks who might want to go, who are avid hikers, but this also talks about the time-wise, you know, 1 hour. Oh, I got an hour to kill, let's go do this. So it also sets the expectation, you know, bring a water bottle and wear a hat. Notice that there's nothing about closed-toed shoes. So this one's a lot better. More likely to attract both active and sedentary people. Some people will read easy, others will read action-packed, and even others will read history. So it's really about, like, what you're kind of saying in your advertisements that can help generate people to come in for a guided walk. You know, interpreters, and, you know, and I'm considering you are all interpreters. No matter what anybody says, you are an interpreter. And with that being said, you know, this kind of helps you to understand, like, you know, sometimes less might not be good. Sometimes a little bit more might be needed. And that's kind of up to you and kind of where you see this program going. So, you know, the one thing that a lot of interpreters have said is, I don't know if there's any fans of the show Mad Men, but the Madison Avenue men who created taglines and advertisings and things like that, they kind of figured out how to do this too, and kind of make people want to be involved with things. It's very similar. I'm not saying we're the same, definitely not, but it's similar. So basic needs. We want to cover this in the staging area of the program. And when I'm talking about staging area, I'm talking about that location that we mentioned, that where everyone can gather and kind of do things. So in this basic needs, we want to cover the things like, as we mentioned with a previous question, we want to cover the route, okay? We're looking at your time commitment, difficulty, things like that. We're looking at the topic. We're discussing, we're telling folks about the availability of facilities. Hey, we're going to be taking a walk we're going to take a stroll through the forest for about 30 minutes. There are no bathrooms along the way. So if you need to use the restroom, you know, please make sure you use the restroom. Reminding folks about appropriate clothing and foot gear. As the leader, you want to establish ground rules. And these ground rules will help with everything going on in your tour. You need to be the leader. You need to be receptive to questions. But you also want to make sure that your folks are having a good time, but they're also making sure that they're following the rules. Because if we all follow the rules, guess what? We get more areas to go explore. It's kind of the deal. Again, special health and safety issues, you know, letting me know about anything that might come up. Recommend items to bring, equipment needs, things like that. So when you're at the staging area and you're getting ready to go out there, the best thing to do is to arrive at the staging area before your program starts. Okay, 15 minutes early. That's great. You're there early. You're there in the staging area. People see you in a vest or in a uniform, and they're like, "That's where I need to be." I think that one of my high school teachers actually said it best: "Early is on time, and on time is late." So keeping that in mind, you always want to arrive 15 minutes early. This shows a level of professionalism. This shows a level of credibility. This sets folks up for who you are, and that you're going to be this person for along the way. So those are things that you want to keep in mind. Another thing in the staging area, you want to introduce yourself. Can't tell you how many programs have gone absolutely amazing, and the people still don't know who you are, or what agency you work for, or what nonprofit you work for. Okay, that's really important, because if they don't know you, they're just like, that was an awesome program. Who are you? That's a basic thing, right? You want to know who you are that you're working with. Now, if we meet all these basic needs, what'll happen is, you know, like what we saw with Maslow's hierarchy, is where we'll have people who want to engage more with us, especially about the topic that we are so excited to present to them, about the theme that we're ready to present. I mean, we're excited sitting there. We're like, oh, I'm ready to go. But if we cover all these needs first, it's going to be even better for our audience. So the staging area also does not need to be the start of your story. The staging area is where you cover these basic needs. You might throw in your theme a little bit, or you might go with a really great transition. And I really suggest your story really start at your first stop, because of the fact that that will help people to kind of get more into what you're doing. A transition works really well with this. If you can transition these folks from that staging area to your first stop, those folks are going to stay with you the rest of the way. So your first stop. So your first stop should be in eyesight of the staging area, as we mentioned. You must meet their, you've got to keep their pace. In that first stop, since it's only a little bit down the road, that will help you to gauge the pace at which you need to walk. And this is a challenge. And I know a lot of folks are like, well, I walk fast. I get it. You know, I get it. I hike at a certain speed too, you know, but our people who are coming to enjoy the resource, They're coming there on their days off. They're coming there to relax. They don't want to go for a major stomp and walk, right? They just want to go enjoy it, and you want to share with them these great natural resources. In this first stop, you will also establish how you want people to gather around you for the rest of your stops. So, you know, you might want to gather them in a semicircle, or, you know, you might want them all off to one side or things like that. But this will help establish that. It also helps establish that you are the leader of this. Your pace will help the group. As the leader, you will also be watching for the hazardous conditions. You want to be walking in front of everyone, okay? You want to be the one out in front, leading the folks to where they're going. This helps with hazards. So, you know, the first thing that comes to my mind is, you know, if I'm walking with a group of people and I'm the first one up front, I'm the first one to see that rattlesnake that's laying on the trail and be like, everybody needs to stop. I'm going to help mosey this little piece of nature bundle right across the way, and then we're going to continue. But that's also can be a teachable moment. Some folks are also wondering about, you know, should I walk backwards when doing a guided walk? No, do not walk backwards. You don't want to walk backwards, because if you end up falling over and hurting yourself, it's not really a good look for everyone, and you've hurt yourself, which is the biggest thing. You want to walk facing right in front of you. You're the lead. You're being safe for everyone. The safety of your group is up to you. So if you're walking, walk straight, stop at your stop, wait for everyone to kind of gather around, and then start talking. That is what's super important. You know, if you have the tail end Charlie, or a sweeper is what we call it, where they help bring up the last of the group, that's great. Wait until people are there. And while you're waiting for people to kind of join in around you, what's a really great thing to do is you can kind of help with that chit chat and other questions that people might have. So keep that in mind. You also want to keep everybody together. You don't want to lose people. That doesn't ever look good. One of the things that was suggested on our break was making sure that if people are leaving the tour, that they let you know, hey, we're going to head off. It's great to see you. Thank you very much. All right. And keeping track of that, just so that you're making sure everybody gets back okay. But again, person who's an interpreter, how many stops should I have? It depends. It depends on your time. It depends on your group. It depends on the length and the difficulty of the route. You know, what I always tell folks that I train as new folks to interpretation is that I usually plan for more stops than I should. And the reason why is because if I've created that thematic map of where I want to stop, you know, and I'm running out of time, I can hit the choice ones that I really, really want to hit. Or if I have a lot of time, I can go to like some of the other kind of like fun little shorty stops that might have something neat in them. So again, how many stops should I have? Well, you're already starting off with 3, a staging, your first stop, and the end stop. So you want to plan for just a couple more in between there. Again, plan for more, but you'll probably be doing less. So just take that into consideration. You also want to take into consideration the attention span of your visitors. Attention span has changed. It is now, especially for my generation, it is less than a goldfish. So, you know, you just want to keep that in mind, especially when you're planning out your stops. And you just want to keep that in mind of like, hey, is this going to keep their attention for, you know, the 30 seconds, give me 30 seconds to talk, and then we go to our next location. Working with large groups. Working with large groups is always an interesting dynamic. And what happens is that your time gets eaten up by the amount of time it takes to move to the next location. Again, most guided walks, the time is being used up when you're moving to the next spot. So you want to keep that in mind. If your group is large, then you want to make sure that you're taking into consideration, maybe I'm going to have my starting spot, my first stop, and then I'm going to have like one stop, and then I'm going to go to my ending spot. You know, sometimes that's what you have to do. Alcatraz Island, we took people going up a super steep hill, but we had to get 600 people up that hill in under 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And so our stops were very quick. And it also depended upon who was behind you and who was in front of you. So keeping that in mind, you know, if with a larger group, like say a group of 300 people, you have to make sure that you've got everybody gathered around you and that you're ready to go, which takes up time. So just plan accordingly. When I say that, I mean like, you know, do the best you can. So yeah. You know, some of your visitors might have a different level of activity, like the sedentary versus active. You may have people in your group who have disabilities. You want to think about all those things when you're in the planning stage of the guided walk. Because if you plan for it, then you're kind of prepared for what can happen. And I say that you're prepared because, you know, lots of things can come kind of sideways at you, especially on guided walks. So, you know, at least you kind of have a level of like, okay, well, folks in a wheelchair can get up to this spot and we can continue on and do things. So just keep that in mind. And again, that's all happening in the planning process of your guided walk. At your stops, you know, you want to make sure that you're keeping safety in mind. You want to keep track of the number of people on your tour, not only for the safety sake of it, but also for accountability. I can't tell you how many interpreters I go, oh, you had a really great tour. How many people were on it? Oh, what do you mean you don't know? I didn't count. Well, it's kind of good to have those numbers because when a organization or a superintendent or someone comes around and says, well, you know, how do you track your numbers? And if you don't have numbers, then that really makes your department or organization be like, oh, well, maybe we should start keeping those. It is a way of showing your interaction with people, you know, and it's a way of showing that it's a very big part of what we do. Your pace, slowest person, this can be a challenge, I know. Each stop, gather, don't start talking until everyone's arrived. Making sure that you're doing that. And, oh, we're going to talk about projection. So, you know, some folks may have a very loud voice, and that's awesome. However, there are some folks who have quieter voices, but they have absolute amazing stories. Can I use a microphone? Absolutely. You can get one of those chatter boxes that helps to project your voice. You can do a lot of things like that to kind of help you. You know, pre-COVID, you know, you could gather people a little bit closer. But, you know, especially with this day and age, I would highly suggest looking at microphones if the organization wants to move to that direction, and especially later on down the road. But, you know, the thing about it is that projection is not needed all the time to bring order to your guided walk. There has been multiple programs that have happened over the years where you watch the interpreter just get quiet and then everybody kind of polices themselves. It's also really funny to see how many adults remember the clapping game or Quiet Coyote or things like that, because a lot of times people, again, will police themselves in your group. So this is really good to know about. Do you need to shout and yell over people to get their attention? No, don't need to do it. Can it be an effective tool? It can be sometimes, but it's not really necessary. So our next one is about teachable moments. And a teachable moment, this is our friend the elephant seal. And a teachable moment is when you're on a guided walk and you're excited, you're ready to go. You've got this whole thing planned out about woodpeckers and they're amazing. And then you're doing the walk and all of a sudden a snake comes out and crosses the road and totally jumps you off of your game. And people are focused on the snake. They don't care about your woodpecker talk anymore. Well, this is a really good teachable moment. And, should you, tell folks like, oh no, don't worry, there's another talk about snakes here later. Don't focus on that. No, utilize these moments in nature that are really special and really be able to try to look at what's happening and being able to explain it and talk about it and say like, this is a really special thing to remember, that we're not the only ones in the forest, or, things like that. Do not be so scripted in your program that a teachable moment is made to be like a bad thing. They're not. They're great. This is what people remember from their trips. They remember like, oh yeah, I was on that nature walk and he was talking about like some sort of like otter thing, but then we saw like this elephant seal. That was the cool thing. And then he started talking about the elephant seal. I didn't know that they even knew about those things. Those are the things that people will remember from their programs. They can also remember your theme, but teachable moments are really great. Lots of times with kids, I've had hawks scream through a program, and then we start talking about what the hawk calls mean, and then we jump back onto our program and talk about, how that works. So, never shy away from them and never be too scripted, that you can't just dive into something. Oh, how do you bring up, okay, so as a walk participant, how do you bring up teachable moments that you observed during the walk? That's a really good question, Lester. So the best way to do that is, if the interpreter didn't see it, kind of be like, hey, especially when you're gathering together as a group, try to have someone say like, hey, we noticed this thing on the trail. It looked like a rattlesnake, but it didn't have the rattles, and it was long and skinny. It wasn't fat. Try to do things like that. If you're walking by something and you notice something, it's always fun to that next kind of be like, hey, did everybody else notice that pattern on the ground? That looked like tracks to me. So it's about bringing those moments into your program, acknowledging that they're there, acknowledging that it's something that was really enjoyable, and then keep moving forward from that. Again, don't be so scripted that a teachable moment throws you off, because I've seen programs where people like script is memorized, they are good to go, and they start delivering their program, an amazing moment happens, and then they're just off. They just can't come back from it. So, really embrace those teachable moments. Yes, emergencies happen, especially when you're out there and things are going on. So this all comes back to planning for it, making sure that, as the leader, you have a way of communicating with staff that can provide the help, or you have a first aid kit that you can provide help with, that you can at least help someone until more help arrives. Now, as the leader, you want to take charge of the situation. You want to make sure that that the person is the priority who is injured. A lot of people in your group are going to be like, well, what about this? Well, what's this going on? Well, blah, blah, blah. Your group wants to help, and that's what you have to remember. And sometimes what you have to do is you have to prioritize what's going on. Patient first, make sure that that's going on. Hey, is somebody available to walk down the trail to go get the ranger truck that's out there. They're looking for us here on the trail. Making sure you have a radio, a cell phone, in reach on your pack, so that if something really goes down and you're far back, that's super helpful. You know, but just as a leader, this stuff comes up, and if it's a dire emergency, it's okay to end the tour. You know, you don't want to be like, all right, well, the guy's having a cardiac arrest, but we're going to keep going and talking about woodpeckers. No, this comes to, hey, we're really needing to take care of the patient. I understand that we're in the middle of a tour, you know, and this is done later when you have more assistance and assistance has arrived. That way you can just be like, hey, look, you know, we're going to have another program here next week. If you'd like to, please come join us. We need to prioritize this. This person needs help. People will understand. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I know this seems like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised. Backpack of props. So somebody asked earlier on in the questions about images and pictures and things like that. So, you know, pictures can help, especially historic ones. And usually they'll fit in a backpack pretty well. In the time of COVID now, you probably don't want to be passing them around. So you want to make sure that they're large enough for people to see. Now, if you can't get it large enough for people to see, you need to figure out something else. And especially if you're doing like a digital program, you can actually throw in an image into a digital program pretty easy. Just like what we do with Zoom and other avenues, you can share that image and it will come up. Now, images need to be at a very high resolution. A pixelated image will not have the same effect as a high resolution image. So, you know, I think about the black and white photo of Placerville, early 1800s. And I've seen it when it's super pixelated, and I've seen it when it's high resolution. And that is super amazing when you see that high resolution. Other props that you can use, I would, you know, if you're talking about a bird nest and you have a bird nest, you know, keep that in your pack, bring that out. Snake skins. I've used the plastic skulls that you can get from Acorn Naturalist. I've used other items that I have found along the trail. And, you know, just if you do find something that's along the trail that you want to use, make sure that you are following all of your policy and procedures on how to use it, okay? Organizations are all different in this. With state parks, we can pick up an item and we can hold on to it for a brief time, but we have to get, you know, permission to keep it and other things like that. If you are a nonprofit, you know, one of the things that you might want to keep in mind is like, hey, you know, you hike the trail early, you find a couple things, you know, you share them on your guided walk, then you go back and you put them back where you found them, right? Because that's what we practice. We practice about leaving the things that need to stay where they were found. You know, other props along the way, you know, you also want to think about like how heavy the prop is, and do you want to carry that for 45 minutes? You know, I think about mining equipment, hammers, axes, things like that. Probably don't need that all the time in your pack. Maybe you might just keep something that's very small that gets the same point across. This is also where humor could come in, you know, where I've seen an interpreter pull things out of the pack that he's like, no, puts it all back, and then he's like, there it is, and he pulls something out. That's if you want to use that. But a pack of props is always good to have, especially because you never know what you're going to find out there on the trail. Or if you find something and you're like, I really want to use that, but then, you know, somebody, Joe Schmo, comes in and picks it up and walks off with it, it's not going to be there. So, you know, props help with a lot of things. Should you be letting people handle props? Not in this time of COVID. I would really not suggest it. You know, if somebody does handle your prop, you know, the best thing to do, like what we used to do with our hiking packs, was to take everything out and wipe it down and to just keep them clean. So that's a really important thing. Ending your program. You know, every good program needs a strong ending. And part of that strong ending is making sure to restate your theme. Restating that theme helps people to remember your message. With the ending of your program, you also, you want to leave them wanting more. Okay. I have a lot of, there's a lot of interpreter friends that want to tell you everything. And it's amazing. And I have volunteer friends who want to do the same thing. And I love them to death. However, if you leave them wanting more, they'll come back and they'll bring a friend. And then they'll bring another friend. And then slowly you've got more people coming that you might want to come see this program of yours. So it's always good to leave them wanting more. You want to end your program on time. Okay. I know that for me, I've been in a lot of Zoom meetings where we don't end the meetings on. It's actually just a sign of respect to end your program on time and make sure that people have understood that, like, you find their time valuable. If you end in an area that's not near your staging area, you want to be able to direct people easily back to where you started. So you want to keep that in mind when you're planning your route, when you're planning your guided walk. You want to make sure that that is easily accessible for folks to be like, oh, you just go down the trail here to your right, and where we started is going to be right there at the sign at the end. Boom. Pretty simple explanation. You know, you don't want to leave them in the middle of the woods being like, all right, good luck. That's not good. So keep that in mind. You also want to have a very clear ending that it's over. What do I mean by that? You know, I want to thank you all for coming and enjoying this program with me. I hope that you've walked away with some information you might not have known about before. Once again, folks, my name is Peter Ostroskie, State Park Interpreter with California State Parks. I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here at Desolation Wilderness. Have a great day. Okay. A simple thing like that goes a long way, because then people know that your program is over. Making sure that you're following all those things. You want to end in the same area, right? There's another thing that you can do with ending your program, and somebody noticed it on what Griff did. And Griff and a lot of other interpreters, what they'll do is in the ending of their program, because this is right at the tail end of that video, is he puts out a call to action. And that call to action is a reminder that you can do something when you leave here today. You know, you can you know, make sure that garbage doesn't get into a sewer drain to protect our watershed. You know, making sure that you pick up things, making sure, you know, that call to action is a good reminder for folks that they have an effect on this whole thing that we all love. So that's really important too, that call to action. Now, I'm going to dive into this next one. Vehicle tours. Of course, I chose the Ford Bronco because Ford just announced that they're bringing back the Bronco. But, you know, in El Dorado National Forest and in other national forests, off-highway vehicle recreation is very strong and alive, especially with 4x4 communities and side-by-side communities. And a vehicle tour works it's very similar to a guided walk, where if you are planning to do a vehicle tour, you want to take into all the planning considerations. You know, you want to make sure that you have your planned route. You want to make sure that you set a slow pace. You want to make sure that you've done all of your research and resources. You want to have the knowledge of your audience and things like that. So a lot of the things that we've talked about so far for a guided walk transfers over into a guided vehicle tour. But there are some different pros and cons with the guided vehicle tour. And this also includes non-motorized. Now, I know I included the motorized recreation. But this also includes like kayak tours, snowshoe expeditions, things like that. And these are some of the similar pros and cons that you can have. So a couple pros about, vehicle or kayak or anything else is that you appeal to a specific audience. This audience loves this type of recreation, and they don't really go after certain aspects of what you're talking about. However, if you're providing this tour, this might change their thinking on it. As part of a vehicle, you can also cover more ground. So, you can go a further distance in a shorter amount of time that you can't normally do on a guided walk. You can get to locations easier than if you were on foot. So some of that more difficult terrain, this can allow you to kind of bypass that or go over it. I know that there is a group out of Sacramento and in other locations that provide 4x4 activities for people with disabilities. And this allows them to actually enjoy the outdoors. A really great thing about this is that with this specific audience and this specific group of people is that you can also teach them about high quality recreational skills. So, making sure that they're not leaving their garbage, talking about how the vehicle's effects of rubber on rocks can be seen throughout nature, making sure that they know about other aspects of how to recreate responsibly. And it's a message that a lot of folks want to get out to people. So this is a really good thing. Now, there are some cons with this, with vehicle guided programs. One of them is communication. If you're in a convoy of vehicles, if you don't have a ham radio or some other way to talk to the group behind you, it's very difficult. Technology has changed this a lot. So that's kind of changed a little bit, but it's still a little bit of a problem. Logistics. One of the things is that if you're doing, like, say, a motorcycle tour or a kayak tour and someone can get out in front of you, sometimes you lose that leadership spot. So you just want to keep that in mind. It does take longer to reassemble your group. I've done motorcycle and ATV tours where you have to gather them all together, turn off their engines, check out the really cool thing, turn on their engines, make sure everybody's ready to go, and then go off. Make sure all the safety stuff's done. It takes a little bit longer time. You have a potential for bigger accidents. So, especially if you choose a terrain that's really difficult and if the vehicles aren't prepared, you can run into bigger accidents, which is an issue. I call this equipment distraction. Working in OHV, I worked at a off-highway vehicle park, which OHV, that's what it stands for. You can get people really distracted by their toys, where, you might be really like, hey, we're going to talk about this great geological feature that we drove to, and you're going to get some guy who comes in with, a brand new Jeep Gladiator, which is the new truck Jeep, and they're going to start oohing and awing over that. And, that kind of distracts people from what you really want to go on. So, there are some cons with it, but, this is really a group that wants to know more about how to protect their resources and how to protect what they have, because OHV, off-highway vehicle recreation, is slowly diminishing. And, this is a really important thing. I think the world of it sometimes myself. Let's see, Lester. On the El Dorado, we have the opportunity for OHV interpreting the Caldera Logging Road. Oh, cool. An old brochure that was produced back in the early 1990s. Yeah, those opportunities are there. And as part of the National Forest or as part of working with the National Forest, there are grants that you can get, especially with OHV and OHV education. If you want to know more about that, you can email me or talk to me later. All right, everyone, we're getting towards the end. All right, COVID. So a lot of folks who might be sitting here on this call or have been working a lot with different things are probably saying like, hey, this is all great. You know, this sounds amazing and I really want to use this. But with everything going on in the world, how can we do this? And, you know, especially with no interactions or other things going on. And the thing is that you can still do guided walks or guided off-highway vehicle rides on a digital level. And that digital level can either be, if there's connectivity, you can do a Facebook Live from a Facebook page. You can do it as a Zoom webinar if there's connectivity for that. Now, I also know that there is not a lot of connectivity out there in this world, especially out at Desolation Wilderness or any other location. And that's what people really enjoy, right? You can still do digital interpretation in a different way during this time of COVID. And what do I mean by that is that you can utilize recordings. You know, one of the things that I'll just make sure I'm going to share with everyone. This is a camera. This is a video camera. This has everything you need that you can record a video and edit it all right here in one spot. You know, you can take video out in a lot of these locations, bring it back to a computer and put it into a really great video that is a tour that you can provide to folks, you know, about your resource. And for my folks, I noticed that there was a few folks on the webinar that are part of NAI, which stands for National Association of Interpretation. It is a professional organization that many of us are a part of. And they are really, we are all really embracing that whole utilizing this technology to do that. So, you know, utilizing that and recording yourself and doing these videos is really important because you're providing that content. Now, there's also a lot of people who say like, well, if I do the video, like it takes away from my tour because this was something really special to me. It doesn't. Okay. What's going to happen, and we've already started seeing this, so I don't have to, and you've seen it in your own resources, is that, you know, you can provide this stuff online, and what happens is that this information gets out to the public and they can come out and recreate better at your locations because of the information you're providing in these videos. They have a better understanding of it. So you are being able to cover those needs of folks who want to know more about what it is you have at your resource. Video recordings, things like that, all that stuff comes into it. And I mean, this is just a small list of how you can do digital interpretation. It can just take a computer. I have done junior ranger programs right here. Wait, hold on. I'm not going to turn it off. Not right here in Tahoe, but right here in my own house in Lodi, California, for junior rangers. And we've talked about stuff and we've done things and our programs are attended and they're well attended. You know, you can create videos and have this information be there on a YouTube channel or a Facebook. Griff and all of his other folks at North Coast Redwoods, they do a lot of videos like that. There's even other avenues that you can reach for different age levels. State Parks is working with an organization called Flipgrid, and that Flipgrid organization provides short-term videos that people can, students interact with and they answer questions. So if you have something that you really want to get across to a group of students about a resource and it meets with standards in their questions, they can then interact with that. And it's recorded, it's not live. You don't have to have connectivity for that. You just have to have a way to shoot a video, which is this. So there's a lot of things that have changed. You know, if you really want to get into it, as far as state parks goes, we are more than willing to help other agencies, nonprofits, American River Association. I'm looking at you because you work closely with us in Folsom, at Folsom Lake, and down at Folsom Powerhouse. I've worked with you before. We are happy to tell you about how to do this, how to get this up and running, because this is really important. To provide this information to our public means that we hopefully will have better stewards coming out, and they'll want to engage even more in our parks. And to give you a quick example, I'm running out of time, I know, is that we took a program that was traditionally done in park, the California State Park Junior Ranger program. And that program was done by interpretive staff like me and other folks in person. We took this program that had never been done in person. We've had this program since the 1980s, and we moved it to a digital platform. And it wasn't easy, but it followed a lot of the same principles. It followed planning, followed our thematics. It followed us having a program, providing the awards, doing all these other things that this program helps to accomplish. I'm happy to say that we've had over, I think we're getting close to 10,000 students and kids from California join us as junior rangers. And it's been amazing to see this change happen and really get this out there. So, you know, this can be done, and we can help you with this. Are there some sample low cost or no cost video editing tools you recommend? Yes, I do have a few that I can recommend, but I'll do that. But you can reach out to me after this, and I can talk to you about that. But we are right at 11 o'clock. So this is my contact information. Feel free to email me. I get to you as fast as I can. Jennifer, I know you have my phone number. I am happy to provide whatever I can for you from California State Parks at headquarters, training, whatever you need. And I'm actually also starting to become a forestry volunteer at the Buck Foundation with the fire watches. So yeah, so I'm here for you as a resource, everyone. And I hope that you know this, that this is not, we can't get through this separate. We can only get through all this together.
Oh, Peter, thank you so much. Everybody unmute yourselves and let's give Peter a big applause, a big virtual applause. And thank you so much. That was fantastic. Great tips. And you are a great resource, and we will definitely be following up. And that was just such a great message to really inspire people to just keep on interpreting, find new ways, adapt, and help connect people to the resource at this time when it's probably even more important than ever. Anybody else, if you want to chime in with comments, kudos, please do.